All right, we'll call the meeting to order and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Start the meeting. Is there any public comment? All right. Move on to the administrative matters. So we need a motion to approve the minutes from January 16th, 2025. They're in your packet.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we got a motion to accept the treasurer's report that's in your packet. Do we have a motion on that?
I'll make the motion.
First, the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And a motion to accept the 2024 audit report. Do we have a motion there?
Move.
We got a motion. Do we have a second? We got a second. All those in, any discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Joe?
Yeah, Joe. Motion carries. All right, up next, we have a state update on the upcoming budget and proposed legislation. So Brad, take it away.
All right, good morning, everyone. I think I know most of you, but I'm Representative Brad Roae, and I represent a big portion of Crawford County, a lot of central and western Crawford County, and a little bit of western Erie County as well. But we are in budget season in Harrisburg. That's going to be the big thing that you hear about. The governor's budget proposal, I do have concerns with it. It spends about $4.5 billion out of reserve funds. It's out of balance by about $5 billion. It requires about over $1 billion of tax increases. That comes mostly from putting taxes on skill games, legalizing marijuana for recreational purposes, and then some changes to how business taxes are calculated. It's a lot of money. A lot of us are concerned that the entire budget surplus would be completely drained during the new fiscal year that starts July 1st. Part of the rainy day fund would be spent also. Then over the next two budget cycles, the rainy day fund would be completely depleted. So, 3 years from today, when we're working on the state budget, there's going to be $0 in budget reserves and $0 in the rainy day fund, and there's going to be, $7 or $8 billion of spending that we don't have any way to pay for unless we do a tax increase or have a big massive spending cut. So a lot of us, we're working to try to rein in the budget proposal. We think it spends too much money. It just seems like we shouldn't be spending more than we're taking in. And those reserve accounts, especially the rainy day fund, those are that's for emergency use. If there's a big earthquake or a flood or a major recession or something like that. So it's probably going to be a budget that is done late this year, which happens a lot of times. The House has a majority of one. There's 102 Democrats, 101 Republicans, so they have a slight majority. The Senate has a slight Republican majority by a couple seats, so sometimes there's not agreement between the House and Senate, so that could be, we could be in for a long budget cycle. Some of the highlights with the budget that might impact you guys, you've probably heard about this already, but there would be a $9.7 million decrease in liquid fuels funding for the different municipalities. And that doesn't sit well with me, and it probably doesn't sit well with most of you. There's a $293 million increase in mass transit funding. So it just seems to be a little bit out of whack. Locally, less than 1% of the people in our area use mass transit, but everybody uses the roads. I just don't think they should be doing that. Something else the budget does, we've been trying for years to phase out the use of motor license fund money to help pay for some of the costs for the state police. We want all the money to be used for roads and bridges and liquid fuels money and stuff like that. Well, we've been on this program for several years where we're gradually decreasing the amount of the funding that comes out of the motor license fund and get all of it into the general fund. Well, the budget proposal slows that down and delays it by 4 years. So there's gonna be 4, years more than there should have been that we're gonna continue to pay for state police out of money that should be for roads and bridges. A couple other things with the budget. The big part, human services would go up almost $2 billion. That includes, welfare, mental health, programs for people with intellectual disabilities, foster care, drug and alcohol, nursing homes, medical assistance, things like that. K through 12 education would go up about $800 million. That's where really most of the increases are. A couple other things going on, like I mentioned before, I'll give a little more details. Most people are familiar with these games of skill. I know the city recently passed a city ordinance to try to regulate those a little bit. They're sort of like slot machines, but there's been court decisions that they're not slot machines and they're not gambling. So they're completely unregulated, they're untaxed, and there's been a push by some in Harrisburg to apply tax. The governor wants to do, I think it's a 52% tax on the profits. And that's getting a lot of pushback because a lot of the VFW posts, American Legions, Elks Lodges, places like that, they have these machines, fire department clubs. So the concern is if they have to give half their profits up to the state, they wouldn't have half the money they normally do to build wheelchair ramps for veterans and buy firefighting equipment and fund scholarships and things like that the clubs do. A lot of retail establishments that have the skill games, it's just a revenue source for them. It's hard for restaurants to stay open. Food is so expensive, the cost of labor is so high now. Most restaurants struggle, a lot of little independent stores struggle, so a lot of people have these skill games. So my guess is we'll probably pass something, but it'll be at a lower rate than what the governor is pushing for. And then the recreational marijuana, that's a complicated issue. Marijuana is illegal at the federal level. So I struggle with how can a state say it's legal if the federal law says it's illegal. There's very serious considerations. When you buy a gun, on the questionnaire, they ask you, do you use an illegal drug? Well, yeah, if you use marijuana, but some people might think, well, the state says it's legal, so no, I don't use an illegal drug. But the federal government considers it to be illegal. So, people with commercial driver's licenses, people that have jobs where they get drug tested at work. It's a very complex issue. There's a lot of social costs in states that have adopted recreational marijuana. You have more needs for different social services, and some people feel it's a gateway drug that can lead to more people using drugs. So I don't know if either of those will pass, but both of those are mandatory for the governor's budget proposal. Even with those things, there's still over a $4 billion hole in the budget proposal. So if those things don't pass, that'd be another $1 billion that would have to get spent out of the rainy day fund. So it's going to be a very, very long, complicated budget process, I think.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for Brad when it comes to state budget or anything else?
I do. The decrease in the liquid fuels funds, it's actually being offset by EV or something else, so it's not really a huge of a decrease is what you're saying, correct? Because I understand the state police portion.
Right.
We've been aware of that for a few years.
I didn't take into consideration that's a good point.
Because there's a new EV
Right.
license, right?
A year, now I actually voted for that. Some people voted against it because they considered it to be a tax increase, but people that drive, gasoline cars like most of us here do, we're paying, it's like 55 cents a gallon or some ridiculous thing for tax. People that drive electric cars are paying $0. Well, we all use the road, so we all should be paying. So there's a new fee on electric vehicles. And now I think the fee should be more comparable to what drivers of gasoline vehicles pay. I can't remember, I don't have it in front of me what it was. It's like a couple $100 a year or
200,
something.
250. I can't
250,
remember.
but
it's-
most of us in this room probably pay 500 a year in gasoline tax.
That's what, when I heard about it,
Yeah.
that's when I was going to do the math, but I haven't yet.
And I think it should be, just take the average privately, registered vehicle in Pennsylvania, take how much, I mean, you can figure out the average mileage that people drive, and whatever that dollar amount is for that amount of gas, that's what the fee should be, in my opinion. I don't think they should have to pay more, but I don't think they should get to pay less either.
Yeah, the number sounded low to me. It really did. Without doing the math, it sounded low.
Are there areas besides, like you said, human services and education that you're looking at that you're thinking, wow, that's way too much?
Well, what I struggle with is as much of a budget, problem as we have, I just don't know if new programs should be started. A couple years ago, there was a new program, it was called the Whole Home Repair Program. Chris is probably familiar with that. But the problem with it is that there's probably 1 million homes in Pennsylvania that need, repairs made to them. And that program had enough money to, fix, 1,000 of them or something, or 5,000, what Crawford County have, 20 homes?
Ultimately, I think it's looking like we'll end up with about 35.
Okay, so in Crawford County, 35 homes were funded. Well, there's a lot more than 35 homes when you're driving around that need fixed. And I'm not saying it's a bad program, but when you already have a multi-billion-dollar deficit, that wasn't funded last year, but it'll be funded. It's funded for a year. It wasn't funded. The governor wants to bring it back. There's a stipend program for student teachers. That started a couple years ago. Student teachers would get a $10,000 stipend the semester they student teach. And the theory is, when you're in college, it's hard to work and go to college at the same time. But I worked every semester, not every semester, 7 of the 8 semesters I was in college, I worked every summer. And we don't have stipends for people, studying other college majors. So I don't know why, we need that. He wants to spend like $50 million for that. Maybe it's 40 million, I can't remember. But little things like that, we shouldn't be starting. When there's this much of a deficit, we should be looking at things that we currently fund and then not be starting new stuff. Now, as far as some of our programs, Pennsylvania, a lot of our programs, we have benefits that are above and beyond what the federal government requires. So it's more expensive. So like, the federal government has standards for things like welfare and medical assistance and food stamps and the different things. And states can't go below those levels, but they can go higher than those levels. Pennsylvania goes higher in a lot of situations, and it's very, very expensive to do it. The human services part of the budget, I should have brought my little budget pie chart. It's something like 40% of the budget is human services, and like 35% is education, 4% is debt. So I mean, its number is almost that bad. So I know this is a long answer, but almost everything in the budget, the governor wants to increase almost every line item in the budget. And I just think most things are going to need to be level funded. There's just not money to increase everything.
Just so you know, I just did the math. The gas tax, 57.6, average miles per year driven is 11,455 in Pennsylvania. Average miles per gallon for light duty vehicles is 25.7. So that's 455 gallons of gas per year, which the tax would be 256.51. So if it's 250, they nailed it.
Right. Now, the thing is, though, depends where you live. Like around here, if you live in, Beaver Center, and you drive, to Erie to go to work, or you live in...
A lot of people drive to Erie from here, for work. But just using averages, it does actually work out. Surprised me.
This might be like, because with the city, we didn't really have an issue, or people that came to the city didn't have an issue with the games of skill. It's the standalone businesses that are making it look like, just terrible for downtown. So is there I don't know, because it became like, how do you don't want that store, is there a way to regulate like the storefront versus, like you said, someone who has, that restaurant that has it at Games of Skill at the entrance, or like the VFW that's using it for fundraising? Like, that's what we are looking at, is how to, because it's that storefront, it's just, you just think, you know, you don't want that, and then the golden coin sold here, and the next business is, you know, we're trying to keep it, so.
Oh, Las Vegas seems to be surviving pretty good with that, you know.
You think maybe we should get,
Model.
I know it's a different problem, I just didn't know it yet.
But to your point, like, it's almost like it would be a secondary revenue
Yeah, secondary
versus a
revenue.
primary revenue.
Yeah, versus, yeah, like a place that's completely committed to that, and, you know, it's kind of playing on people who are have, you know, a certain addiction and stuff. So I just didn't know, like, that was the thing that came up. I don't know, on a state level, it's kind of like,
I
you
mean,
know, is that determining when is it the sales, is it, I don't know. I don't have the answer.
Right.
It was just that's what we were presented with, so if you,
I'm not sure who's in a position to decide what is
yeah,
ugly and what's not, and, you know,
Yeah.
what's offensive and what's not. Usually, people open businesses, and if customers want to buy their products or services, they
Yeah.
do. If they don't, they don't. And, you know, businesses that have what people want, they stay open. You know,
yeah,
it's hard to imagine all the skill game places in Meadville are gonna be open a year from now. It just seems like there's so many of them. It's hard to imagine,
yeah.
you know, the money being divided up among all of them, plus all the clubs, plus, you know, it's hard to believe how much money people are spending at those things.
Yeah, I didn't know if that came up, like if it was just a curiosity, because it was literally like, well, we don't know, we're just trying to limit the, you know, the numbers, I guess, you know, say, oh, enough, there's enough cigarette places and enough.
I don't know if you look at Vernon Township here, they seem to realize that less regulation equals more growth. That's,
I think that you guys have, like, Vernon has
Just throwing
places
it
to
out there.
grow, right? Because you guys have places to grow, isn't, I mean, just when I started serving, it was quite clear that Meadville's like landlocked, Vernon is like, there's land out there, there's places, it's a different, yeah. Yeah, you're right.
but you're taking space for green space, which is a higher maintenance now. You literally took spots that could produce income and create it into a liability.
Yeah, that's,
And you're
yeah.
talking about doing more and more of that. So that is not a
Yeah.
winning solution.
Yeah, yeah, no, I don't think that there's that, and that's kind of like a temporary thing, like, until someone buys it.
A temporary job is the most permanent thing.
You're like, you go back, there it is, you're like, my fix is still working. Well, there's that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many taxes were temporary?
Yeah.
All right, any other questions for Brad? No? All right, any other business? I see we have Commissioner Seeley here. Got anything from the county to throw at us? Anything new we need to be aware of?
Nothing specific off the cuff. I know that you were involved in our discussions about the property tax rebate for first responders. We're anticipating, we discussed that again just this morning. We've come up with a pretty reasonable set of eligibility requirements that I think we're gonna go in and retweak one more time, actually based on your recommendation. So I would presume that will be slated for a vote in May. As some of you, those who are particularly some of the townships have been paying attention to the countywide subdivision and land development ordinance, that is slated for a vote next Wednesday at our voting meeting. We've done quite a tour of municipalities to go out and speak with everybody and absorb questions and absorb comments and the like, and I think that we've crafted a pretty good ordinance all in all, and we're looking forward to getting that up to a vote. I think those are, for the time being, the two larger items that would be of pertinence to this group. Always happy to take questions now or any time for that matter. Yeah, I think that's barring any specific asks.
Chris, the land ordinance thing, now, is that, the county's gonna do one that applies countywide, But each municipality can do their own if they want?
That is correct, yes. Unlike most laws in the Commonwealth, this is not a top-down, this is a bottom-up sort of thing. So right now, countywide, of our 51 municipalities, 22 do not have a subdivision and land development ordinance in existence. So when the county's ordinance would come into effect, if it were, presuming it were to pass next week, there would be a 6-month delay before it becomes active, so to speak. So during that time, anybody who would rescind or pass one of their own or whatnot would kind of chart their own fortune as far as that is. But yes, at any time, 2 years down the road, we'll use our good friends in East Battlefield, for example, do not have one. If 3 years from now they say, no, okay, let's pass our own, they're free to do that, and the county's document would no longer be relevant there. So we have heard from a few townships that they would be more interested in doing their own ordinance. We've heard from a couple that are interested in rescinding their own ordinance to go along with the county's. And we're okay either way, and we're happy to assist however those municipalities want to move forward. We're just there to help. But yeah, it has been a very long, tedious process, but it's a 67-page document. And yeah, but compared to most municipal ordinances, tend to be about 210. So it's pretty streamlined. It really kind of gets right to the point. We tried to capture the essence of the different character areas of Crawford County, and it's a big area that's got a lot of different sorts of a lot of different traits. What works for East Battlefield isn't going to work for downtown Meadville, isn't going to work for Linesville Borough or East Mead or what have you. So we tried to build in those variances right into the ordinance, so it can be flexible and while still maintaining the goals of protecting the land and property and the people of Crawford County, it will still allow for growth and for personal property rights and choices.
Can you speak to, as far as, are you having to hire at the planning commission? Hopefully, it's not costing
No.
any
No.
more
There are,
funds or
yeah,
any
just
more money.
with any SALDO that's passed either at the county or local level, there are always fees attached for developers. And those fees will be captured by the county. We're not intending to have any full-time SALDO guy. We're not really going to need that. So any additional cost is going to be absorbed by what we already have and offset by the fees that would be collected from the services being rendered. In the case of like higher level developments that would require engineer or legal review, we will be contracting that work out. We wouldn't really do that internally. Our county solicitor, great guy, is not really interested in reviewing SALDOs all day long, and we don't have a county engineer on staff, and nor do we plan to do that at any time soon. That would be kind of overkill. So the goal, of course, is for it to be revenue neutral. Obviously, you know, we hope for the best, and after a few years we may need to look at what sort of fees we're assessing and where our pinch points may be. So it will always be a work in progress, but we've at least got a good foot in the door so far.
What would you do for the engineering firm then, like the review? Would you do like an RFP or?
Yes.
If you don't have a current engineer,
Right.
what
Yeah,
would you
we
do
would
for that?
do an RFP, and what we would be asking, at least at this point in our conversations, that it would be a per service use, so there would be no long-term retainer. So we would only be exercising that contract when it was necessary, and it would be for the amount that we're collecting essentially. The county would just be a pass-through for whatever services would cost at that point. So, yeah, but the goal is that we're not, that particularly areas that do have SALDOs, Linesville Borough, the larger townships, you would in essence be somewhat backdoor paying for those who do not by the adoption of the county SALDO if we were to use general funds to support it. We wanted to be sensitive to that we did not want that to be the equation that funded this thing, so we took great care to make sure that was not the case.
Thank you.
You bet.
What about that safety study?
Yes.
Do you have any updates on that? It came up.
I do not, and I should have prepared for that before I came, Councilwoman, my apologies. If you would like, I'd be happy to get back to you.
Yeah, that would be great, yeah.
Sure.
I was actually gonna just address that real quick
sure.
in the other
Yeah.
comments.
Okay, good.
But I can do it now if you want, because tomorrow is the last day. If people want to get online and actually look at the different areas that are, there's like 10 of them, or maybe only 6. But there's a number of areas that if you want to make comments or suggestions, or at least look at the areas throughout the county, you can do that until tomorrow. So there's maps, they have really nice informational.
And Joe,
Zach
you
Norwood and there's.
were
a-
kind enough, I think you did email that out to.
Yes, I did. I
So-
provided out, but tomorrow's the last day. So if anybody wants to look at some of that, either follow the email and the link or contact county planning. Zach
Feedback is
has all
greatly
that
appreciated,
information.
particularly from municipal officials, municipal services, fire departments, EMS, that's some pretty critical stuff that we're very interested in having that information.
All right, anything else? We have our PennDOT Municipal Service Rep here. You want to add anything to add?
No, I'm just here.
All right, sounds good. If we have nothing else, the next meeting is scheduled for July 17th at the Westmead Township Building, and I'll take a motion to adjourn. And a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Opposed? Meeting adjourned.